Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to day two of Innovate to Build 2026. We're excited to have you for another great day. I am Annalisa Montenegro, the Director of Marketing for North America's Go-to-Market, and joining you today from New York. Just some housekeeping notes before we begin. This session is being recorded and will be available to you afterward. We'll also return shortly after the presentation for a moderated panel discussion. And also, we encourage you to please post your questions throughout this session so that we can bring it to our presenter during the Q&A session. Excuse me. I'm also so glad to introduce to you our next speaker. Steve Jones is a longtime friend and someone who has presented with us many times through our Tech Perspectives events at Microsoft Resources and now part of the Greater Group. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Annalisa.
Hi. And if you've heard Steve before, you know he brings clear, practical insights backed by real data. And for those who actually joined us yesterday, you may have seen his colleague, Eric Gauss, the Dodge Construction Network's chief economist, who shared the construction outlook. And if you missed it, please sure to catch the recording later because it certainly sets a great context for today. So in this session, AI for Contractors, Steve will share findings from the recent research on how general and trade contractors are actually using AI today and what's driving adoption and where they're seeing real value. With that, I'm thrilled to welcome Steve Jones. Steve, over to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Annalisa, and welcome everyone. I'm Steve Jones. I've been in this industry my entire year. I did about 20 years in architecture and engineering. I was a principal with a big firm in the northeast of the U.S. That then became the main component of Stantec when they came down into the U.S. I did the dot-com plunge and spent 4 years with a big tech company called Primavera as a vice president there, as they were just getting out into the internet space. And that was very exciting for me personally because, of course, whereas my AE experience was pretty much domestic, Primavera is all over the world. And that really got me plugged into the whole global construction economy in a pretty powerful way. And then I was asked 23 years ago to come over to Dodge and start an industry insights research group, because this is the biggest industry on the planet Earth by a really large measure. But it is so fragmented that it's incredibly difficult for any one practitioner, an architect, an engineer, a contractor, an owner, building product manufacturer to really know what's going on outside their own front yard. So we do research into all kinds of different aspects of sustainability and technology and project management and project delivery methods and safety management, risk management, all manner of things. And folks will come to us and ask us to do this. They'll sponsor it, but it's published by Dodge, and these are all free. So this QR code here, which I'll have up a few other times if you want to take a snap of it now, this is where you can find all manner of free reports that we do. A lot of them have been about technology because, of course, that is such an important aspect of what's going on right now. The key theme of what we're trying to do here is everybody's busy. Everybody's got work, projects that got to get done. And so if we can go out and look at what companies who look like them are doing, and then of all those things they're doing, what's really having an impact, that's the point of these things. It's like who's doing what and what's really working best. I want to share with you today one that we did very recently here, just about AI, because there is so much noise about AI. You know, and a lot of it tends to be, I'll call it aspirational, right? It's, oh, it will do this and it's going to do that. For us, it's much more important to try and say, all right, let's stop and find out exactly where we are now, right? What are people actually doing? And then we can come back to this in a couple of years, as we did with BIM. We spent 20 years coming back to that every couple of years around the world, watching it advance. And we plan to be doing the same thing here with AI, because it's clearly going to be advancing throughout the industry in a lot of really interesting ways. We'll get into that in a minute. But we did a survey of general contractors and trade contractors right at the end of last year. And we got very good broad industry participation, as we like to do. We made sure we're getting small, medium, and large firms. And in some cases, there's some differences there, and I'll point those out as we go through. And we made sure we had folks in the heavy space as well as all the major building types. So again, everybody's pretty much represented here, and we made sure to get lots of trades. You can see that list down there in the lower left. We wanted to make sure we're getting everybody's voice in terms of what they're how they're engaging with right now. So what we wanted to do was, big picture, just kind of put our thumb on the pulse of contractors and say, do you think this is going to be a big deal? Where do you see it right now? All right. How big of an impact is this going to have on our industry? Then we wanted to benchmark awareness because there's a lot of AI that's already out there, already been baked into and embedded into very well-established construction technology tools. So we, for both project management and for company management, wanted to say, are you aware that these are now available? And if you are aware, are you using them? Right? So we wanted to identify also then what expected benefits people have as they're considering AI for their companies. What matters to you the most? Right? Because an awful lot of this stuff is kind of being led by tech companies doing things that they can do, assuming the contractors are going to benefit from it. Okay. But what we wanted to try and do is collect from the industry itself, right? What do you really want this thing to do? What are you expecting both its features and its benefits to be for you as guidance for vendors? So they're building the things which actually people want and need. And we also wanted to spend some time looking at organizational readiness and barriers to AI adoption internally, right? We did a lot of this as we were studying the growth of BIM, for instance. It's a different way of doing a project. And as it's not just a matter of buying some software and then suddenly the sun rises and the flowers bloom and everything's wonderful. No, you really have to do some work internally in order to make sure that you're prepared to be successful with it, right? And then we had also collected from all these various companies that we work, tech companies we work with all the time, right? What are you doing now? What's in the lab, right? What's coming? And we put those out there and we said, all right, to what degree do you believe, both in project management and company management categories, these things are going to actually help you? And again, we're trying to help guide the vendors so that they're making the things which people really most want and need. And we wanted to highlight, okay, when you get faced with the opportunity to now engage in a new AI functionality capability, how are you going to make that decision, right? What are the things that are most going to influence you? What are you going to be looking for first, second, third, fourth on your list to qualify something to make sure it's something that's right for you? And again, a lot of this was to help other contractors understand that there is a good way to do this, as well as helping the vendors to make sure, okay, these are the things which are most important to my audience. Let me make sure that my tool, my feature, my function actually supports those. So let me give you some of the kind of big picture overview stuff that we did. We'll start out with just those kind of overall AI trends in construction. We asked a simple question. We said, which statement best describes your current perspective on the future importance of AI for construction? And I'll show you what the choices are. You guys, you decide for yourself what you think you would have said had you filled this out, and then I'll show you what the whole group said. Number one, AI is going to be transformative. It will fundamentally reshape how construction itself is practiced, right? That's kind of the most extreme impact view. And there's one a little bit less than that. Yes, it's going to be standard. It'll be standard in construction, widely adopted, but they weren't ready to go to the point of saying it's going to be transformative and really reshape construction, right? Then there was, well, it'll enhance specific tasks, but it's not going to redefine the whole approach, right? So it's going to be episodic. It'll be case by case whether AI is a good thing or not. And then, of course, there's the ones who say, it may offer some niche construction applications, but man, it'll always be out on the edges someplace, right? Not a big deal. And so for yourself, just think, how would you have answered that? And I'll show you what this group said. 17% were on board saying this is really going to be a transformative force. And another 27 said it will be standard, right? And so I just call those extensive impact, right? That's meaningful impact. And that's almost half, about 44%. Then you've got 43% with that kind of targeted impact, right? It'll be valuable, but in very specific places. And then you still got 13% who think it's really only going to be peripheral. And that's pretty low, right? Which is good. And I think this is probably a good, accurate view of the overall U.S. construction industry viewpoint on it right now. And there were some interesting variations between the types of respondents. They were pretty consistent between GCs and trades and across the size ranges. Well, one thing I found particularly interesting was that among those who were in that really highly transformative group, that 17%, it was actually 23% of the folks who do heavy civil think it's going to be really, really impactful versus only 14% of those who construct buildings. That's a pretty major difference there, almost 2 times. And it's interesting that the folks doing heavy civil think that it's going to have a bigger impact there. There's a page, and again, here's the QR code. You can go and get this report. But we asked one question, just an open-ended question, as we enjoy doing sometimes at the end of that section of the survey. We said, what do you think is going to be the biggest deal? And I am always really impressed by the thoughtful and insightful responses that we get from folks who fill out our surveys. And these are just pulled off of that page in the report. Where you can take a look at where people are seeing that this is going to be really impactful for project management, productivity, quality, and competitiveness, to be able to do predictive analysis. We also asked, to what degree do you think AI is going to be a competitive advantage, right? Because in reality, the way it's rolling out, it's being embedded in tools that other people have. So it's somewhat difficult to make it really your secret sauce, if you will. And so knowing that in advance, we didn't bias the audience at all with that. We simply asked, hey, to what degree do you think AI is going to contribute to a greater competitive advantage for your company? And we gave them 5 choices. The bigger companies, 86%. It's, at least going to be moderate, if not higher, very high. And the small mid-size may be a little bit less so, right? Only 69% really were in that camp. Trades a little bit more bullish about it than GCs. Again, kind of an interesting finding. I did not expect that coming in, but indeed, trades are a little bit more bullish. In that very high group, you had more of the GCs, but overall, in that kind of moderate high, very high, the trades are a little bit stronger. But really, very positive viewpoints overall about the fact that this is going to make us competitive. At some point, some aspect of that, of course, is going to be that even if it's table stakes, I have to have that in order to compete with the other folks in my market. We said, thinking about your current and potential future use of AI, how important is each of the following features for a solution that you're going to want to have in your company? And we did benefits after this. These are just features, right? What do you want this thing to be able to do? What are the functions are you looking for it to have? And so these are the percentages among these top 4 here who either rated it high or very high, right? So this is the leading stuff on the top of mind of folks. They're looking for a really high level of accuracy. They have to be able to rely on this. They need it to integrate easily, right? Which is, I think, one of the reasons that I'm favor embedded AI rather than standalone AI applications all by themselves that don't naturally integrate. But the ones that are embedded into the tools you already use that can work with its structured data. And we'll talk about data in a minute here, but producing outputs in the kind of formats I need, some variety in that, right? And then that great ability just to talk to it, right? Use plain language. Again, that's one of the top 4 things that they're looking for it to be able to do in terms of its functions. And then in terms of the benefits, this is the same sort of a model here. This is the percentage who rated these high or very high. Number one overall is, man, I just want this thing to just make my life easier by taking care of an awful lot of those repetitive and mundane tasks. And you'll see that pop up a little bit later when we look at specific use cases for this. And then number two is I want to be able to learn from my company's data, right, to improve, do forecasts, processes, outcomes, whatever. And that's another reason why you'll find that an embedded AI tool is going to work better than a standalone ChatGPT or Claude or something, where you take project data that you might have in 10 different formats and dump it in there and hope to get anything useful out of it. Making it easier to share data, helping me make better decisions and provide insights I might not get on my own, right, around risk analysis or resource optimization, and then automating workflows with AI that I currently do manually, right? And we'll look into that a little bit later too. We dug into that a little bit more. But these really rely on good data. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time here in a minute or so talking about what we learned around the current approach to and quality of existing data to make it useful in AI. So we wanted to know, of course, what are you worried about, right? And these are the top concerns. And these are, interestingly, only even the top two here, 57 and 54%, only it's just a little bit more than half. We're used to seeing numbers that are much higher around things which represent a certain amount of significant change and where people might be concerned. But reliability, right, as came through on that previous slide, and then data privacy and security risks are number one and number two. Interestingly, in the report, you'll see that there's a long interview with a fellow I've known for a long time and asked to contribute an interview here. And he has something interesting to say about lack of reliability. It's Aaron Roberts, and he heads up the whole global engineering construction practice for EY, Ernst & Young. So he's dealing with some of the biggest companies all over the world. And if you look at the report, you'll see there's a nice long interview with him in there. But he says, man, whatever errors we make due to inappropriate reliance on AI, they got to be so much less than what we're already doing today, which is abundant every day, all the time. He's betting on AI for that one. The next three after that were the costs, and you'll see that's largely the smaller companies. Resistance to change within the organization, right? We wanted to ask about that because, boy, we saw that so much with BIM coming up. And these are relatively low numbers, which is nice, right? Not that many, because this was hey, select all these that are important to you, and being less than half is a good sign. And then, again, the cost, which is going to be, as you'll see, a little bit more for the small companies. And then current data quality is not adequate. Only 31% said that they think that. And we wanted to ask about job displacement because, boy, you hear so much about that, right? Everybody's concerned it's going to replace jobs. That scored the lowest, right? Only 1 out of 5 people is even worried about that in any way. And I think that's healthy, right? Because I don't think this is about that. I frankly prefer to call AI augmented intelligence because it's not about replacing. It's about making us all better and more productive. So that was good news. I think this one, though, unfortunately, as we'll see in a minute, was probably understated. I think people need to be more worried about this than they are, but we'll get to that. And as I mentioned, there's some variations here. The larger firms, much more worried about that reliability and more worried about resistance to change within the organization, because the bigger the organization is, the harder that ship is to steer, right? And that their current data quality isn't ready. They had a higher, 48% of them, almost half said, yeah, we get that our current data quality, it ain't ready, right? And the two cost aspects were more important to the smaller firms. So getting into that, Aaron Roberts also said, yeah, indeed, our clients have not focused enough on prepping their data to be accessible for AI to actually reasonably use. So here's another thing we asked, and I'll ask you to look at this and think about how you might answer for your own company, and then I'll show you how this group said. How do you rate the current quality of the data that your company would benefit from having AI do an analysis to? Is it excellent? Highly accurate, complete, consistent across projects, right? Tight as a drum. Yeah, or is it very good, right? It's mostly accurate, but there's some inconsistencies to it. Or is it just good? Well, it's generally reliable, but it has gaps and it has inconsistencies, right? Those are the kinds of things which honestly create hallucinations in AI. Or is it poor? It's kind of a mess. Or is it very poor? It's really a mess, right? And so think about how you might answer that for your own company's data, and then I'll show you what everybody says here. No surprise, most people put themselves in that kind of good range, right? It's good. Only 5% can say that they have excellent data, and only 21% can say theirs is very good. So that kind of ready for AI, about a quarter of the industry's got data that's ready to really be useful and functional. The rest, there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done on that. So we also wanted to look into this kind of organizational preparedness idea. So we asked, at what degree is your organization committed to preparing yourselves for AI over the next 5 years? And so these are the folks who would say it's either a very high level of commitment, or at least a moderate, right? And you still are just kind of barely getting above half we're actively exploring AI, we're piloting use cases, we're improving the data quality, we're preparing our current staff, and really sort of around a quarter there doing it at any high level. And it goes down from there. Are you updating your legacy system so that they can integrate? Well, not so much. Are you establishing any governance policies and oversight procedures for how it's going to get used within your organization? Are you allocating any actual budget for this, right? So you begin to see, especially that high, very high, you're now getting into the teens. And then are you creating a tiger team, right? The cross-functional AI implementation team, right? So you can actually engage the right people in moving this forward. Not much. And then are you building any partnerships with AI technology vendors, which I think is a great lost opportunity. Only 14% are doing that at a high, very high level, because those are the folks who actually want to put AI in their tools that make your life better. And then, as I mentioned before about adapting workflows, this is a place where you could put your own company's secret sauce into something and really make it a competitive advantage. So we said, all right, which statement best represents how your company is planning to adapt existing workflows to accommodate AI in the next 5 years? And then the most engaged would be, we are redesigning our workflows to integrate AI, right? Next after that as well, we're modifying certain ones where we think it shows promise. The third is we're looking at it, but we haven't done anything yet. And then the fourth is we're not going to really do much of anything. We don't think it's going to be important, okay? And so again, sort of put yourself, think about your own company and say which one of those might apply to you. And then here's what everybody says. I put both those top two in as what I would call active, because at least they're doing something, right? But only 2% are really committed to doing it big time. Another 17% are doing it selectively. 51%, about half, are in that kind of wait and see mode, which is pretty typical, frankly, of the construction industry in general with anything that's innovative. My favorite thing I like to say about anything innovative in our industry is that everybody wants to be first, to be third, right? They want somebody else to try it, screw it up, somebody else to get involved, figure out what they did wrong, and call me, baby. I'm all in, but I don't want to be any of those first two people. And then you still got almost a quarter of the people saying, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. I'm not going to have to do anything different. It's just going to happen around me and stuff. I think that's a little bit of ostrich activity there. So I'll take you through what we learned more specifically about just project management and company management, and then I'll give you the summary. We had 13 features which we know are already AI enabled in commercially available software today, right? You could be doing any of these things without a whole lot of effort using AI to do them, right? But as is the case with many things, especially moving this rapidly, we wanted to know, are you even aware that you could be doing that? And then if you are aware, are you doing it? If you're not aware, how come? Or if you are aware but not using it, why aren't you? And so that's, we took everybody through these questions. Do you know it's available? If it is available, are you using it? If you're using it, is it better than what you were traditionally doing it with. And then if you know about it but you're not using it, what are you waiting for? Right. So the responses we saw around the awareness and the use are these, okay, in this order. So you can see nothing's more than 50%. 46% was the highest that there was even awareness that it was available, right? So there's education out there that needs to be done by the vendors in the industry and also, industry associations, whatever, any way that people can share the idea that, hey, you could be doing this today using AI. 3 of these didn't even have a 25% awareness. You see in that little gray box on the right there. But of those who were aware, very few, only one double-digit usage of 12% around automated quantity takeoffs. The rest are like little single-digit, just barely using it, even though you're aware you're not using it, right? Among those who are using it, though, boy, are they getting great results. We said, okay, how much better is it? Is it much less effective, about the same, more effective, or much more effective? And these are the folks who said it's either more effective or much more effective, right? 86 to 92%. These are really strong numbers. 70 to 78%, half to 2/3. These, I do this for a living, and I got to tell you, these are really strong support numbers here. And even the ones that had super low awareness overall still scored really well in terms of saying, this is better. Right. This is definitely a way to go. So then we said, all right, you know about it, but you can see the pool, but you haven't jumped in. Like, what's up, right? What's keeping you from doing that? What are you worried about? So we said, which statements, right? 3 of them, I'm interested, but, okay, I'm interested, but we don't have the resources to look at it. My company hasn't approved it. I don't have that capability in my software. Then there's one look, I'm not against it. I just need to understand it better. And then there's a couple which I consider to basically be a negative output. It's I don't trust it, and I don't think it's going to be better than the way we're doing it today. Right? So again, you can think about which of these might apply to you. And then in the report itself, there's lots of data, granular data, so you can really learn a lot about it. I'll just deal with averages for our time together today. And on average, about 3/4 are in that top 3 group of, yeah, I'm interested, but there's like something in my way, or I just need to know more about it, right? So that's actually really pretty good. People are interested, but they're a little bit of that, classical construction industry wait and see thing going on. And only less than 1/4 are in any way negatively inclined. So we asked about those new functionalities, right? Here's 7 of them, which we've been told by various vendors that they're going to be bringing out. Automated constructability analysis during design to flag field issues, right? Brilliant stuff. Intelligent permit and regulatory submission, right? Great stuff. That could make a really big impact. So we showed everybody these things and said, all right, how important would each one of them be on this scale here? And so where they say they would see value, I included the moderate in here as well as high and very high. Really pretty good numbers, right? 3/4 up to north of 80% saying, yeah, I think this is going to really be meaningful for us, right? So there's good stuff coming, and people are psyched about it. And I wanted the vendors to see this kind of information coming back to say, this is what people really want. All right, so what are you going to be looking for, right, when you have the opportunity to get engaged in something? Well, I want transparency, I want data security, I want integration, right? A little bit less, but still, half-ish are looking for an ROI. They're looking for good vendor support, and they need it to be scalable for different project sizes and different company functions. Hardly anybody cares that other people are using it, right? And in some cases in our industry, it's very peer influence. They want to make sure that they're not that first one, right? They want to be the third one. But in this case, it didn't score that high, right? So, which is encouraging. And then we went through a similar thing for company management functions. We had 11 of those going from general ledger, managing accounts payable, payroll processing, et cetera. Again, all available today, right? We went through the same set of questions with them. And so in terms of that availability, you'll see the awareness, still only peaks at 50%, but a whole lot more actual usage, right, among those folks who are aware of it. So company management is getting a good deal more traction right now than project management is. And especially those upper ones. You saw with project management, there's only one sort of double-digit 12% usage. Here, most of them are double-digit. Automated client communications, contract risk evaluation, new business opportunity, vendor management, managing equipment, inventory. Good traction here. That was very encouraging to use. And of those who were using it, even higher numbers, 100%. We rarely see that, right? There's always some naysayers in the weeds here and there, right? 300%. It's the 90s and high 80s and stuff. This is really, really strong thumbs up for this. And again, even the ones that have very low awareness scored well in terms of those that are actually now using it. So this is good stuff to get engaged with, right? And then in terms of, okay, you know about it, but you haven't started using it yet, why not? Half of them are in that I'm interested, and about a third just need more
Hi, Steve.
And then we did the same thing where we had collected some input from various tech companies about what they're going to be bringing out, and automated contract creation, predictive business risk, intelligent market opportunity ID, dynamic pricing optimization based on market conditions, right? So that's like really
Hey, Steve. I'm sorry, everyone.
60s up to north of 90%. People saying, yeah, I would really like to get my hands on something that did that. So again, good stuff is coming, and should be a lot of value available. And again, we were trying to point this largely towards those vendors to say, this is what your audience really wants, and this is what they're telling you now that they're looking for. And in this case, when we said, what's going to influence it when you have now that put in front of you to say yes or no, it was the same top three, but the data security was the most important, which makes sense at the company level, right? More so than the project level, to have company level data privacy. That made sense. And then integration, because again, at the company level, you're concerned with how all that portfolio of tech stack you have all works together. And then followed in third place here by the transparent AI decision making. And then the same three, but lower percentages here. It's saying proven ROI, high level of vendor support, scalability. And then again, nobody really cares that much about the fact that other folks are using it. They're much more focused on what's it going to do for me. So in summary, I think that the point of what we're trying to do with this is just take a snapshot, right? Where are we as an industry in the US, at least right now, about AI? And what we found was that the optimism is running really pretty high about AI's future. 87% expect at least a meaningful level of industry transformation. Only 13% are thinking that, this is not going to be a big deal. And 72% are seeing at least a decent competitive advantage for their company, right? Compared to the early days of BIM, this is way, way, way much more enthusiastic and optimistic about it. But when we looked at that awareness and the usage, only half or fewer are aware of all the 24 currently available functions that we asked about. 3 are being used by large shares, but the other 21 are by very small shares, less than 10%. Most of the aware but not using group are interested to some degree, right? They're not negative, and very few of them really have a negative attitude, right? So that again is good, because internal change means is you got to have people on board in order to be able to operate differently. But man, among that group that is using it, wow, off the charts numbers in terms of how much meaningfully better it is than whatever methods they were using in the past. That was super encouraging. But there's a gap that we identified here between this kind of organizational optimism and any kind of organizational action. The most was you had about 50 to 60% in the world of piloting use cases, at least, right? Some are improving their data and some are preparing staff for those AI related roles, but only 42% really have any kind of governance going. Only 40% have any kind of budget for this. Only 38% have put a team together, and only 19% have adapted any of their current workflows to be able to work in an AI environment, right? And that, again, I think that's where the secret sauce can be, because you may be using an awful lot of the same tools as other people do, and it's played out that way with BIM. I mean, you can use Revit or whatever you're using. Anybody can license that, but it's how you use it, right? How you've made it function within your workflows that makes the competitive difference for you at a company. It makes that productivity difference, right? It makes the quality differences for your company. So this is an area I think that needs a lot more focus, is right. Looking at how it is you work. Now, how is AI going to plug in all the way along? And what do we have to do to change those workflows in order for AI to actually be able to provide that benefit that's right there waiting for you? That data quality is definitely an obstacle. I mean, only 5% think that they have excellent data, and only 21% rate it as very good. And you got 16% out there saying it's pretty abysmal. So this is an area that in the past, you could say it hadn't really been worth it to bother to be consistent, complete, accurate, current with any project data that's going into your company's project records of how you keep track of the work that you've done, such that you can go back and learn from it and be predictive and forecast things in the future, right, with it. Because it didn't matter that much. There was not really that much use for it to organize it that well, right? Why would you organize a file drawer if you're never going to go back in it again, right? Just dump it in there and shut it and forget about it. Natural. But now there's a reason, right? Because this is the lifeblood of AI. This is the key ingredient. And if you want AI to be able to do something useful with your data, right, you have to have better quality. It has to be more consistent across projects. It has to be more accurate. It has to be more complete. Right. And at least it has to be as current as it can be in terms of, right, this is the actual completion, not 90% or something, right? This is, and I think this is another reason why it's worth looking at the kinds of AI that's embedded into other tools, because those tools have gone to some effort to standardize the data within them that you're using. So they already have a head start in terms of working with that. But now when you need to integrate that across tools is where you begin to get the gaps and to get the interoperability issues and things. So it's a thing that has been improving, but it will continue to be a degree of an obstacle in getting everybody's data tight enough to really be functional. And then looking forward, there's a lot of interest in some really cool new functionalities. The top 4 for project management were being able to do that constructability analysis in design, to automate that permit process, to have autonomous project optimization. You see the weather forecast is coming. What might that mean to my schedule? What should that mean to my material deliveries, right? Just boom, here's some decisions we think you should make and some stuff we think you should do right now. And that predictive quality control, looking at where it is the quality problems have come up in the past, looking at this particular project and saying, this bears some similar aspects of that. Maybe this is a place you should be focusing on to do that quality control, right? To be predictive about it, which again is so hard to do on the fly without access to good information about your past projects. And then in terms of company management, being able to be dynamic to optimize the pricing based on everything that's going on in the market, because it's more complex all the time. Automating that contract process, being predictive around risk assessments, and the whole new business decision and support. So I want to share with you just for a minute some of the new stuff that we've been working on. These are all published reports that are available to you right now up at that QR code. We did a deep dive into risk management. The folks at Liberty Mutual asked us to do that, and looking at what kinds of strategies and tactics contractors are using right now to manage risk, which is different in nature under these compressed schedules and larger projects and resource constraints and disruptive supply chains and all kinds of risks that are going on in today's world. So what's working? Again, so what are people doing and what's working? We did a really interesting one about the workforce. I think most of you have dealt with the fact that it's difficult to find folks and good skilled folks. We did a survey of GCs and we did a survey of 1,300 civilians, folks who aren't in the workforce, aren't in the construction workforce, but are either looking for a job or would be willing to consider a new career. And we compared that, right? And so again, the idea was if we can find out what's in the minds of all those prospects, that's going to help contractors do a better job of putting construction in front of them as an attractive career. What are they worried about? What are they looking for? What do they want, right? Because you can't assume that the same old fits now, especially with new generations coming into the workforce. So this was meant specifically to be really a guide for contractors to understand what non-construction workers today might want in order to come into construction. We did an ROI study in several countries just about where are you getting the value, how are you measuring ROI, and where are you getting ROI for your project management software. We did one about lean construction and how it's having a really positive impact on teams. We did a really interesting one about job site collaboration and coordination among trades. And it's very interesting, the degree to which the trades are working most effectively actually just directly with each other, not even going through GCs, in order to work out stuff at the site itself. But this was just very site specific. And then we did two about ERP, one for specialty trades and one for GCs, right? Again, what are people doing and what's working? We've got some that are in the lab right now. This one is going to come out next week that we did for DeWalt and Pinnacle, looking just very specifically at that BIM to fab workflow for mechanical. And we did a really deep dive into what the current state is, what the best practices are. Again, like what are people doing and what's really working. We've got a really interesting one coming out soon here for Autodesk in the US and the UK and Australia, Germany, and Japan about the state of industrialized construction. Right, DFMA to prefab, productization, modular, a really great deep look at where we stand right now. We have one coming out. The survey is about to hit the field right now about the key trends. What's on contractors' minds this year, and what are their concerns and strategies. We're doing our sixth one for CPWR about safety and managing safety in construction. We have one that we're going to be doing for Contruent that has an owner focus because owners are getting more engaged in project management all the time, and portfolio management for their own project portfolios and getting their hands much more into the controlling, especially because they're going to want digital twins coming out. They need to know that the data is coming in a certain way. And they know that certain things work better on projects than not. And so we're benchmarking where owners are in terms of their maturity of getting engaged in project management at large owners. And then we're going to be doing one about project controls later in the first quarter. So a lot of good stuff coming. So at this point, Annalisa, if we have any questions, I'll be glad to take those. I'll leave this up. Thank you, everybody. I know this is kind of like drinking from a fire hose, and I appreciate your attention. But again, this is the QR code that can take you to this AI report and all of our other reports.
Steve, thank you so much for that presentation. As always, you did a fantastic job, not just from the drinking from the fire hose, but grounding AI in real data and real contractor behavior. You actually talked about cutting through the hype and showing what the industry actually is doing today. what really stood out is that while AI adoption is still early, seems to be the intent is there. So that's interesting.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Before we jump into Q&A, I want to encourage everyone to drop your questions into the Q&A panel right now or the chat box. At the same time, whether you're just starting to explore AI or already experimenting, it's a great opportunity to ask, what's working, what's realistic, what to watch out for. So we can cover that. I just wanted to publish a quick poll right now because I know you have polled and did the survey for your constituents. Steve, I want to find out with this audience, where are you today with AI? Are you just curious, actively experimenting, or already seeing a value? Okay. It seems to be neck and neck. We'll just give it another minute.
Oh, interesting.
Is this in line with what you saw?
I can't see it, so you'll
I'm
have to tell
sorry.
me what it says.
Apologies. Yeah, I forgot. 64% they're actively experimenting.
Good, good.
Okay. 25% is just curious, and
Yeah.
12.5% is already seeing the value. So
Okay,
that's
yeah. So that's good. Yeah, that's aligns reasonably well with what we're seeing.
with what you're seeing. Okay, good to know.
Yeah, and I bet if we did this a year from now, those numbers would be very remarkably different because it is moving so fast.
That's interesting. And we actually have Phil Bernstein on the audience as well today, and he thought it was an interesting presentation. Your analysis went from sentiment to end user functions and results. So safe to assume that your subjects were using out of the box solutions, like generally available platforms. So if not, now what?
Yeah, we did not ask them when we asked about their awareness and use of those embedded functionalities. That was embedded software. For this purpose, we stayed away from are you using, a standalone LLM to do X, Y, and Z. We were trying to get a sense of where we stand as an industry on using the embedded functionalities that vendors are putting into established tools or, relatively mature, smaller startup-ish, companies that are commercially available.
That's interesting. Yes. And yesterday we had the Women in BIM panel session, and we had CBT Architects who supports a lot of the startups. So it's interesting to see their experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think they mentioned that what was interesting for them is they really support the startups, and that there's so many other solutions out there, but they're saying that unless you have a problem or a challenge you're trying to fix, then it's harder to, you just don't use the latest tool or the fanciest tool. So it's
Yeah, you
interesting.
always have that choice, right? The big guys are going to move at the pace that big guys move. And, they're going to do what is on their roadmap. And part of our hidden message here, hopefully not so hidden, to that community is these are the things that ought to be on your roadmap according to your customers. Okay. This is what they're asking for. These are the things that are like less important to them, right? So if those are high on your list, you should push them down and move some other ones up. But again, if you don't want to wait, and you find somebody who's got something that looks like it works, as long as you have a process in place to say, I know what I want from it. I know where we have gaps. I know what I'm expecting. I'm going to implement it in a rational way. I'm going to measure what it is I'm expecting it to do, and actually do measure it, and know whether or not it's achieving the goal that we set out for. Not just say, hey, they say this stuff's cool, let's start using it, and just wait to see what happens, right? As long as you have a way to evaluate it, go ahead. Don't stop yourself from using a startup to try something, because it may be a long time before the vendors you're currently working with get to that functionality.
Understand. So sounds like the key takeaway is like see what's measurable value you can see from it.
Measurable value is the key. Yeah. And that's a place that we often see as we do our studies, that it's difficult for companies who it's nobody's full-time job in most companies to do this kind of thing. Everybody's doing it as a part-time activity, as running their digital transformation. because you got buildings to design, buildings to build. And so it's a matter of having a fairly simple process, but having a process, right? Knowing what you want to achieve, and then looking at vendors in terms of, and holding that vendor's feet to the fire of saying, I told you this is what I wanted to do. Prove to me it does it, and then help me do it, right? Give me that vendor support. And that's why you saw those numbers pretty strong in terms of, I'm going to need good vendor support here.
Yes. So when it comes to an AI, what do you think is the most important mind shift or skill contractors should be developing in their teams right now? And how can leaders support that without overwhelming their workforce?
Yeah, those are really great questions. But once again, I think that since trust is the number one currency in the construction industry, it ain't money, it's trust. That working with companies that you already trust to provide this functionality within a context you're already familiar with is the easiest way to begin to experience the benefits of AI. As I have tried to tell every tech company I've talked to for the last 2 years, would you just shut up about AI and simply put it into your tool? And then suddenly your tool is going to start working better, right? The new release of your tool will magically be doing a whole lot more than it used to do. You're going to get better renewals. You're going to get more people leaving their tool and coming to your tool. It's going to be good for your business. It's just going to be an easier way for everybody to be moving up. And then you can say, oh, by the way, that happens to be being done by AI. But just stop leading with waving this AI flag. All it does is make more noise, and noise doesn't help in this already noisy environment, right? You actually need to have a calm path by which to keep moving forward at a reasonable pace. And that's why I think that there's a benefit to working with some of the established technology companies out there who are putting this into their tools, simply making that tool work better, with a cognizance that you've got to be able to scale this across functions in your organization and scale it across different types of data that it needs access to. Because AI is way more powerful than we're actually using it for today. The core functionality is almost limitless in terms of its ability to crunch data, but it all depends on the quality of that data that it has to crunch, right? So it's not a race. There's no panic here. And as we can see from the aspect of people don't care that much that other folks are using it, it's really all about how's this going to help me. You've already gone to all that effort to use these 8 different tech vendors that you have in your tech stack today, right? Make sure you're talking to all of them about how are you incorporating AI. And these are the kinds of things we struggle with. Are you doing anything in your tool with AI that's going to make that better? Because it seems like it should. Hello, knock on that door and make sure that they're listening to you.
Interesting perspective. It's really interesting because like a lot of the people that use AI right now always say test and justify, or test. What is it? Yes, test and justify, just to make sure that they make sure that it's not just hallucinating. And yet your takeaway.
That's the thing is that if you're using a standalone LLM, it's only as good as what it has been trained by other people on. Right. Yes. And the quality of most people's internal data right now, if you simply poured that into an LLM, it's not going to do for you what you optimally want it to do, because you've got too much problem that you're pouring into it in terms of inconsistency in the core data you've asked it to work with. Right. And so the trust factor, as you saw, scores pretty highly in terms of people's concerns and in what they're going to be looking for. Make sure I understand how you got to this decision, and make sure I know how to trust it, because I'm about to go commit resources to it, right? As I said before, trust is the number one currency in our industry, right? And if you already trust XYZ company to have been doing a pretty good job with your project management software or your contract software or whatever it is, trust that they're probably going to do a reasonably good job of baking AI into what they're already doing. And that lowers the risk for you of having to worry about, all right, I poured this stuff into ChatGPT and it says this, can I believe it? then you're no better off, really.
Yes, so somebody had said, trust but verify. So instead of
Yeah.
testing. Yes.
Right. Yeah. It's maybe more like plan, do, check, adjust. The lean approach, right? You just keep iterating, but keeping the risk relatively low each time you do it, so that you're not going to make a bad mistake along the way.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much again, Steve, for taking the time to answer the questions and sharing your expertise today. And a big thanks to everyone who joined us, asked the questions, engaged the conversation. We hope you're living with ideas and inspiration. So to take back to your team, before we wrap up, I just wanted to mention that the next session is with Randy Deutsch and going to talk more about innovations, how, what, why in AI. So please join us there. And we look forward to seeing you on behalf of Great Tech. Steve, thank you so much and see you all in the next session. Have a great day, everyone.